Welcome, welcome. This is Unscripted on the Serato Twitch, and my name's Matt. Thank you for tuning in if you're just tuning in right now, and shout out to everyone who listens on the podcast on the regular. This is our first episode for 2022. We're getting the year started off right, and I'm really excited about today's guest, mainly because I've known him for a really, really long time. So, today's guest is a New Zealand-based drummer, producer, visual artist, DJ, and a friend of mine for many years. Julian's released numerous records on BBE, Wonderful Noise, and played in many respected bands and with many artists. He just put out a new record called Modes, which is available now, and you can actually pull it up in the chat if you just press ! And follow. It's really fantastic. It's a really solid record front to back. Highly recommend it. Just dropped in December, if I'm not wrong. Without further ado, please welcome Julien Dyne to Serato Unscripted. What's up, Julien?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for joining us all the way from sunny Aotearoa.
My pleasure.
Is it actually sunny?
Today's a little bit overcast, but it has been impeccable weather this last few weeks, so pretty lucky, really.
Fantastic, man. How's everything going, though, man? It's been a long time since I've seen you.
Yeah, all is good. Yeah, it's been a pretty productive and busy summer so far here in terms of gigging and touring and stuff. So quite a few things have fallen over with cancellations with COVID, but that saying, quite a few things have happened and continue to happen. So fingers crossed it's not going to get worse anytime soon.
Are you actually able to tour the record in New Zealand right now?
Yeah. So we had a lockdown late last year that was for about 4 months here in Auckland, but everything's kind of easing off now. Played a large show in Christchurch on the weekend with Lady Six to 11,000 people.
Oh,
so
wow.
That was pretty cool. And then I did a club show afterwards, which had a few hundred people. So things are slowly easing up, and big gatherings are happening and festivals are happening and stuff.
That's fantastic. Hey, I just want to give a quick shout out to Spell. Big up, Spell. Kia ora. Welcome, and good to see you on here in the chat.
Hey, Spell.
Another New Zealand legend right there.
He's a legend, man.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Now, are you both from Wellington? Were you born in Wellington, Julian?
I was born in Montreal, Canada, but I was raised in Wellington.
That's awesome. I did know that you were born in Canada. Fellow Kaniwi.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, with the similar. Were you born here? Were you born in Canada or were you born in New Zealand?
I was born in Christchurch and then lived in Canada. So we're like reverse people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's so awesome,
wow.
though. Are you actually, speaking of other countries, are you planning on touring the record outside of New Zealand anytime soon?
Yeah, I've been quite fortunate that I've been able to tour Japan 6 times. So I'm hoping I can get back to Japan. And also if I can get back to Australia, that would be great. I'm not sure about Europe and the States. I'd love to, but just kind of it's so up in the air at the moment with all this COVID stuff. So we'll see about that. But I'd like to go and do some shows in the UK if possible, because Soundwave, my label, are based there in London. So it'd be good to kind of connect the dots with those guys.
Absolutely, and such a great musically rich country.
Absolutely.
England.
Yeah.
We've also got Master San from Brazil in the house right now. Another great country for music and very rich.
I love Brazil. Yeah, my favorite.
That's awesome. And now you're a huge record collector, so I imagine Brazil and Japan and also England being huge, like a really amazing destinations for collecting records. Would that be right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Japan is kind of mecca for records, so I tend to come back with like a couple of crates of records every time I tour there. I've been fortunate enough to go to Brazil and found some amazing records there, and coincidentally I often buy lots of Brazilian records in Japan because they're quite fanatical about Brazilian music there, and obviously London, there's so many great shops in the UK, and Yeah, I always buy lots of stuff when I go to the UK.
Yeah, and your Instagram feed is constantly re-upped with amazing records. That's one thing I feel like you represent very well on the Instagram.
Yeah, that's kind of my main forte for the Instagram. Does feel a little bit lopsided when I've got other things going on in my life, but I kind of like it visually, you know, like I like following other record nerds and I like posting things and um, but it's not just trophies for me. I'm really into the music, you know. I really like playing these records all the time in the house uh, and when I DJ out, I'm you know unearthing all the things that are in my collection and all the things I've bought recently. So yeah, I'm just a massive fan.
That's so rad. I was gonna say about records as well. I mean, just obviously the platform, the fact that it's a visual piece of art as well is always such a nice thing versus an MP3, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty archaic when it comes to that. I just the tactility of the object and the sound of it, and just the ritual of playing records. You know, if you're making dinner or something, and or you've got friends over, I just love it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not always that convenient, but I definitely dig it, and also the limitations too. Sometimes if you go out with one bag of records or two bags of records, you know, you've got to work and kind of weave and tell a story with the stuff you've brought with you. So you get quite good at knowing your music and your records. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm into it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of records, we should really start to talk about a little bit more about your new record modes. Um, I'd love to know what was the inspiration like when you were working on the album. What were you listening to?
Um, I think predominantly I'm sort of like still stuck in the world of listening to records from days gone by. So I'm listening to mostly old records, you know, like Brazilian records, Nigerian and African records, and lots of jazz. And basically, I'm obsessed with black music, you know. So from America and from all the different African diasporas. That's kind of my main thing, really. I mean, I think in the past I used to be really kind of conscious about checking out lots of new producers and new music and trying to stay current. And these days I just kind of rely on uh, influences from afar and from the past, and also just kind of relating it back to my own production style more so than trying to kind of like hop onto anything that's current.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel that sometimes it's almost like you feel a little pressure to have to keep up with the Joneses in production
Yeah,
world, right?
yeah, and I think at a certain point, and I think it happens to a lot of people. At a certain point, you just kind of know. You feel like you have enough of an understanding and a feel for what you know and what you like, and you kind of just rely on instinct rather than trying to like A B and compare it to other things. I could be wrong, you know. I know lots of people that do stay current and it works well for them. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think also other people that, I mean, historically, someone like Joe Zawinul from Weather Report, I remember he was saying that he didn't try and listen to lots of music that was coming out currently because he didn't want to be too influenced by it. He wanted to
Hmm.
just stay influenced by his own melodies in his head, and if he did listen to something, it would be like Duke Ellington or something from in the past. I don't know. Not to like compare myself to Joe Zawinul in any way or put myself on anyone's level like that, but um, I'm constantly listening to music, um, and whether it seeps into my productions or not, I'm not sure. But I enjoy it. I'm a music fan. I love music.
Yeah, I think that's really good to hear too. I mean, I actually spoke with a producer who makes a lot of great music, and he's a fantastic producer called Ocean from London, and he made
Yeah,
a really good point. And when we spoke, he said, you know, there's nothing that's completely an original idea. Everything is drawn from somewhere, anyways. But
yeah,
in saying that, to your point, I guess if you're listening to only current music, then you're going to be so influenced by a current sound that you maybe miss an opportunity to reference something that was from the past, which is always a great source of inspiration, right? I think
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been quite conscious about never trying to be distinctly retro in any way. I mean, I've got friends that can do that, and they can take a an era of music and replicate it like down to the T, you know. And I've never been able to do that, which I think is maybe a kind of a strength too. That I take enough of influence from different eras and different styles and genres, but I've never been really good at kind of aping them to the point where it's authentic, you know. But so I think that means that my music's always a sort of this kind of slightly bastardized homogeny of all these different things, you know. And I think that's kind of a little bit of a New Zealand thing too, a little bit of a trait here, because uh, we don't pigeonhole ourselves so much in any one genre, and often people are kind of jack of all trades who did bunch of different things. So, for instance, I'm a drummer and a DJ, a producer, a visual artist, and I think those things all kind of inform each other. But I think in other countries maybe that's a bit harder to do. You've kind of got to like specialize a bit more, perhaps. I don't know. That's kind of a generalization, but I'm sticking
No,
with
yeah.
it.
I think that's a really good point, though, and you know, I think growing up in New Zealand is a very unique experience, you know, in a lot of ways too. And I'd love to hear you talk a bit more about that. You know, I think it's got a lot of influence from, you know, yeah, the U.S., but it's also got influence from England, and obviously it's got its own very rich music culture with the Polynesian and Maori culture as well.
Yeah.
And it all kind of blends together, and like you said, in a very interesting way. And you really notice it when you leave, right? Like, is
Yeah.
that something you've noticed when you go on tour? Like how New Zealand has its own thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite I mean, it can be uh you know, to its detriment too. Sometimes those things, you know, there's certain genres that shouldn't be mixed together, in my opinion. You know, so that's taking it to the extreme. But by and large, I think all of those factors that you mentioned definitely contribute to it being quite a unique and rich musical culture we have here.
Absolutely. I've got. I just want to give a quick shout out to DJ Chucky, who's in the house. And he was just talking about how it's great to see festivals are happening in New Zealand. Yeah, we're definitely a bit jealous over here, seeing you guys enjoying a summer and being able to go to venues and have a good time.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, guys. Yep. Apologies.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. It'll come. We'll get our summer eventually.
Yeah.
But speaking of different sounds, I noticed that you have a really great list of collaborators on the record, and I'd really like to hear you talk a little bit about what your approach is to writing tracks with other people or collaborating with those people on the album.
Yeah. I mean, I think with Modes, I made a real conscious choice to make it more of a vocal record. So basically, all the tracks bar one are vocal tunes, which is something in the past I'd never tried to do to that extent. It was always sort of one or two vocal tunes kind of peppered throughout largely instrumental records. But I really, yeah, made it effort to try it out and see if I could do it. You know, there's a whole other skill set that's involved with working with vocalists, and some people are really adept at it and skilled at it. I rely a lot on the strength and the talents of the collaborators that I'm working with, particularly vocalists, and I trust their instincts and their skills to kind of help me out. Yeah, so in terms of a kind of game plan or modus operandi, that was the main thing, was to get lots of vocalists and see if I could make it more of a vocal album. In addition to that, I wanted to work with a lot more musicians from Australia, particularly from Melbourne. There's quite a simpatico thing going on with a lot of the music that's being made in Melbourne. People like Stucky from Surprise Chef, and Horatio Luna, who's an amazing bass player. He features all over the record. And a lot of vocalists, Alicia Joy, Tim Guy, who I'd worked with before, Liam and Nkechi from Sasquatch. Am I forgetting anyone else? Yeah, and in addition to that, I tried a few kind of really iconic legacy artists here in New Zealand. Like, so I managed to get Joe Dookie from Fat Freddy's on a track, and Shay Fu, as well as Troy Kingy and some of my regular collaborators, Mata TK and Lady Six. Uh, Also, I was really fortunate enough to get a young vocalist called Samisi Mayai, who's from a kind of indie band called Marlin's Dreaming, or out of Dunedin, and he features on 3 tracks on the record.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, so there's quite a few, kind of traditional sort of soul singers, but quite a lot of kind of like more sort of glacial, shoegazy indie singers on there. So I've been kind of exploring that realm a bit more, where you've got vocalists that are kind of more in tune with working with kind of jangly guitars and things, but then putting them over kind of electronic or house-based beats and seeing what happens.
That's really cool,
Yeah,
man. I'd never really realized that, but yeah, Dunedin. I mean, there's a whole history about Flying Nun and the Dunedin
absolutely. Yeah,
thing, which is a distinctly New Zealand sound, and obviously, if you're not familiar with Flying Nun, that record label is kind of legendary outside of New Zealand for this specific indie rock sound, right? Would that be correct?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's very iconic. And the band, yeah, Marlin's Dreaming, are from Dunedin, and kind of reference that
Oh,
sound a
that's
bit
cool.
with the kind of clean and the Chills, and those kind of bands, kind of, yeah, that sort of angular, and it's also got a kind of got elements of kind of krautrock kind of leanings, sort of can or noi kind of motoric, repetitive things. It's really cool music. I'm a big fan of that Dunedin sound.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear you talk about it. Actually, I didn't initially like recognize it on the record, but now hearing you talk about it, of course, and knowing you, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Quick shout out to a couple other people that just joined us. Big up hits Danny, Mr. Sonny James, of course, who helps produce this, and Minal Ice. It's good to see you guys in the chat, um, and I can see that you're using the Scarnon emote, which is a lovely way of saying hello, Scarnon. Very appropriate for this New Zealand interview right now. But but yeah, I also wanted to talk about Shay Fu because Shay Fu obviously for us, and I mean, maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but Shay Fu and DLT had a massive hip hop song in New Zealand called Chains, which if you don't mind, we'll just quickly do a quick demo for people who aren't aware.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, Chains is like an iconic New Zealand rap song. It's a classic. It's just
really.
hopefully you guys can hear that.
Yeah.
I don't even think this is on streaming services actually.
Come make my chains come help me out. Living in the city ain't so bad. Come make my chains come help me out. Living in the city ain't so bad. Just me like a bomb straight from where the how comes I got sight.
So that song, what is that, like 96 or something? It was pretty early
Yeah,
90s, but very very foundational rap song for New Zealand.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's integral, key. Yeah, pivotal. Um, I remember that when that came out and watching the video on, home at my parents' house. Uh, Super iconic. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, Shay had such a great career prior to this with Supergroove as well. So that was a massive band that he was a part of, which kind of is get a bit more like a Chili Peppersy kind of funk pop. Uh, yeah, that sort of amalgam of that time. But yeah, Chains, huge. I've actually got the single on cassette
oh
of that.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I think like I'm like you. I was such a massive fan, and still am a massive fan of Shay Fu. It's so integral if you're from New Zealand and of a certain age. Like it's part of the fabric of the society. Really, like everybody. That album was so massive, to be specific. Uh, and I think on a side note, like the musicians that were involved with that, like Chip Matthews and Godfrey DeGrue and Paul Russell and uh, those guys were, you know, people that I looked up to before I moved to Auckland, and I wanted to connect with them, you know, based on that kind of history and lineage. So I was fortunate enough to be able to start working with those guys and being bands with them. So yeah, no, it all kind of links up. And I kind of I just had a bit of bravado, and I just hit up Shay. I said, you know, like, what do you think? You want to maybe work on a song? No worries if you don't want to. And I kind of knew that he was into some of my music because he had sent like screenshots and they'd post them on Instagram of him playing like Layer and some of my other tunes with Maratike. So I knew he was into my music, but you know, I didn't know if he would say yes or what, or whether he even respond, because like you know, like we know, he's just so iconic. He's like a megastar.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was super cool to work with, and we did everything remotely. So he did all his vocals at home, and then just sent them to me, and just I can't believe it. Yeah, it's kind of surreal, really.
That's so awesome, man. I've actually put it in a playlist. If you guys are interested in listening to any of the songs that we're talking about, I've made a little playlist on SoundCloud that you'll be able to check out later. And it's got the song featuring Sheifu Scoop off Julien Dyne's album Modes. I'm just gonna run that real quick for a second. I just feel like, just to give people some context of what we're talking about. We just touched on Chains by Sheifu, and now we'll just play a quick snippet of the song he is on off Modes called Scoop. Let's see if we can get some audio coming out here. I realize this is the one that I didn't set a cue point for the vocal.
All right.
I can scoop you up. I can scoop you up. God tells me nothing till I say so. Oh, bumping this music till the pain goes sideways. It's leaving me. Wind the window down. Let the air be. Sacrifice. Oh, I smoky airways. Cloud living up above. Skip the staircase. I can scoop you up if you like. I can scoop you up. Travel light. We'll make room. Holler soon. My storms never.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's Scoop featuring Sheifu off Julien Dyne's record Modes. Amazing sound, and I really like how it's such a cohesive record, and you know, it doesn't sound like out of place at all having someone like Sheifu on here. Everything still is very cohesive and works together with all the different textures and vocalists that you've managed to keep on here.
Oh, thanks, man.
But speaking of very important hip hop and R&B records, can you talk about some specific New Zealand hip hop and R&B records that maybe informed your tastes or influenced you as a young man growing up in Aotearoa?
Well, definitely Sheifu's records. So To Be Specific and The Navigator, Damn Native were really influential to me. I mean, I think that must have been 96. I'm not sure the actual year, but they had a lot of Zane Lowe beats on there.
Yeah, shout out Zane Lowe.
Zane Lowe. And just the production was just so incredible. I think Annie Morton Submariner's involved in a few of the tracks there. And what else? I'd say those two are probably the most influential to me. I mean, I think in the wider scheme of things, there was lots of stuff that was on the radio and on the television, you know, In the Neighborhood, the Sisters Underground tune, that's massive.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
South
jam.
Auckland kind of anthem. What's the other one? Hip Hop Holiday. That was really, really big. I think those things all kind of collided. Like, I was really into skateboarding as a teenager, and you would go to big skate events, and that music would be playing, you know, over sound systems, and people would be doing graffiti and breakdancing, and I think it's that kind of whole thing where everything collides, you know. Same with skate videos. You had lots of, you know, influential music. I remember like when we were hanging out early days, you playing the bass line to "I Want You Back"
Oh yeah.
from Jackson 5, and I remember that being on the Blind Video Days VHS, and that had like Mark Gonzalez skating to John Coltrane, and it had "I Want You Back," and it had Husker Du under Jason Lee's clip. Just all of that stuff was really pivotal, you know, like really important. All of the music and how it correlated with the visual and the culture at the time. Interesting thing about "I Want You Back" is I got to record with the Mizell brothers
Oh wow.
in Cologne in Germany, and I was talking to Fonz Mizell, who's since passed away, and he was talking about that song. And I was like, "Oh, so did you play piano on that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I played the bass. I doubled the bass line with the left hand, and Freddie Perrin did the glissando." And he was talking about how they were writing it, and then they'd written it. It was actually meant to be for another Motown artist, and Berry Gordy called him up the night before and said, "Hey, change your lyrics. We've got this kid group," and they were really disappointed, you know, because they were like, "Oh, what?" Because I think it was, I can't remember who it was going to be for, but it was, you know, one of the more sort of popular Motown artists, and they had to change the lyrics to suit the Jackson 5. But yeah, massive hit, and crazy that it all links back to you playing that bass line. And
That is a crazy story, Julian. That is
Yeah.
insane. And of course, the Mizell brothers. I mean, they've produced so many deep cuts, so many
yeah.
essential joints. I of course know a lot of their work with Donald Byrd and Wind Parade
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
I mean, I asked those guys like every question I could think of about relating specifically to that era, you know. So I'd be like, talked a lot about Harvey Mason and Chuck Rainey and the crew that they were working with, and you know, Donald Byrd, and my dad had played with Pepper Adams, and I told them that because Donald Byrd and Pepper Adams had a group together in the 50s, more of like a hard bop, bebop group. And they said that Donald Byrd would often talk a lot about his times with Pepper Adams in that era and stuff. So, yeah, it was crazy. I mean, just the loveliest guys, the Mizell brothers, you know, like, and so many, you know, seminal, iconic cuts, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a really good segue. I was going to ask you a little bit later, but I feel like we should just jump right into it, though.
Yeah.
About your father, because he's also a bit of a New Zealand legend.
Yeah.
As a bass player and a teacher, and he teaches jazz. He taught me jazz when I lived in New Zealand at Wellington Polytechnic. I want to give a big shout out to Paul Dyne, actually. Paul Dyne played a big role in helping me out earlier on when I was not doing so well in high school, and he got me into jazz school, and it straightened me out. So big up Paul Dyne, and so he played with Pepper Adams. What other incredible things has your father done apart from playing with Pepper Adams and fathering you?
Yeah. Well, my parents were based in Montreal for 10 years, so from 1970 to 1980. And my dad played a lot with a guy called Billy Robinson, who was in Charles Mingus's band. He played with Sonny Stitt, did like a week's engagement with Sonny Stitt in a club in Montreal. And in fact, Sonny Stitt, when he came to New Zealand, my dad went to the show and kind of met him backstage, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know if you remember me. I played with you in Canada." He was like, "Yeah, man. What are you doing down here? You can play." And he kind of like bigged him up, which was, you know, amazing. My dad's also played with Andrew Hill, Lee Konitz. Yeah, just a lot of iconic people that are kind of like, you know, Sonny Stitt's 1 degree separation from Miles Davis, and Billy Robinson's 1 degree separation from Charles Mingus. So he was playing with the top musicians in Canada, and then when he came back here, he linked forces with Roger Sellers, a legendary drummer that was a member of Nucleus in the UK. So I don't know if you know Ian Carr's Nucleus, really amazing kind of seminal jazz funk group. real kind of hip hop sampling material stuff. Like the album Roots is pretty iconic for its big drum break. Um, but so yeah, so he linked forces with Roger Sellers, and then they were kind of the house rhythm section. Um, did lots of stuff, like recorded with Mike Knock and toured with him many times. Mike Knock's probably the one of the most famous New Zealand jazz exports, really.
Wow.
And he was a member of Mike Knock was a member of Yusef Lateef's band. Also played with John Handy, and you know many. He was actually in the Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers for a little while. Yeah, incredible guy.
Wild.
He's Sydney based now. Yeah, so coming from that kind of legacy, my dad had lots of musical instruments around the house. Great record collection, which I managed to steal from him.
Yeah,
Including
I've done
lots
that
of
too.
Blue Note. Yeah, lots of Impulse and Blue Note and CTI records that are
Grails,
amongst
right?
all of that. Grails that I've pilfered for my own collection. Uh, and also just music was kind of very inclusive in our household. Like my dad would often invite musicians over to have like a jam session. So all these amazing musicians would come over, like Jonathan Crayford and Roger Sellers, and they would play in the lounge room of the house, and then we'd all have a big meal together. And and there's something amazing and emotionally as a child, it's quite complex jazz music. There's lots of feelings and
Oh, looks like we lost you, Julian. Please come back. Um, just hold on a second while we get Julian back. We're really getting some incredible history right there. So let's bring him back here now. Looks like he's here. You're back, Julian.
I'm back. Sorry, I don't know where you lost me, but yeah, lots of music in the household as a kid, and it was a good time. And as soon as I was old enough, like I started mucking around with my friends in the neighborhood and started making horrible music, and I kind of was quite heavily into sort of punk rock and heavy metal and rap music as a teenager. So I was doing lots of kind of punk and metal shows as a teenager. But as I got older and as my tastes developed, I got more and more into jazz music and to funk and black music and stuff in general. Basically, a lot of it was that sort of hip hop sampling things, like Tribe Called Quest samples you'd hear on, a Freddie Hubbard record or something, and I started joining the dots. I was pretty big into the like Weather Report and Herbie Hancock 70s stuff. And then
fusion.
I kind of progressed from there. Yeah, fusion.
It's interesting, actually. Feel like fusion is such an interesting time, and is a real good segue into talking about your record modes, because you can really hear a fusion of different elements going on there. I hear dub in there, I hear jazz, I hear funk, I hear disco and house music, and it actually made me think, and I really wanted to ask you about this, because in that same era of 70s, all the records I love from that era, a lot of them were played, a lot of like the drummer Idris Muhammad played on a lot of those CTI records and
Yeah.
Blue Note records. And then he had his own records, which are also really fantastic fusions of the things that it sounded like he was really into of that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
With those drummers, is that a very, I feel like they've also been sampled a lot too. So there's that, I guess, lineage or association there as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love Idris Muhammad is one of my favorites. I was lucky enough to meet David Matthews at the Rebel Music Academy in 2004 in Rome, and he had lots to say about those Idris Muhammad records that he produced, because he wrote most of the music, so Turn This Mother Out and those kind of things, which are quite influential in terms of hip hop sampling and
dance music too.
Loft classics as well. Some of them, Could Heaven Ever Be Like This is kind of a David Mancuso loft classic, and so joined a lot of dots there. I'm really into drummer-led records too. I I was lucky enough to get a lesson from Bernard Purdie, so I'm really into his records, into the records that he features on. And in terms of jazz artists, I'm huge into Alvin Jones and Tony Williams and Roy Haynes, so I collect all the records that put out under their names, as well as the records where they're sidemen. I don't know, I think there's something quite unique about drummer-led records. You have obviously more of an insistence on rhythm, because that's the kind of viewpoint that it's coming from. Sometimes harmonically limited, but within that you get a different kind of beauty too.
Absolutely.
Obviously, like bands like Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, Philly Joe Jones, and then if you go to more of the fusion thing, like Billy Cobham and Alphonse Mouzon and all those people from the 70s. I mean, I could go on for days. Or African music like Tony Allen's records. I really like those. Yeah. Essentially kind of Fela Kuti records, but something about it being drummer-led kind of makes it, maybe like simplifies it in certain ways, and maybe more prominent in terms of rhythm, or the beats more put to the fore,
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, shout out your dad again, because when I went to jazz school in Wellington, I remember Billy Cobham came to do a presentation, and I was like super excited. Yeah.
Wow.
And your dad and I think Roger Sellers opened up, and then they had Billy Cobham perform.
Wow.
It was a very memorable moment for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack DeJohnette, I really love Jack too. Jack DeJohnette. I mean, I think he doesn't get as much praise as other people, but I mean, he's just incredible. I mean, from the Charles Lloyd stuff to Miles Davis to Bill Evans to all of his own records, and his style of playing is so uniquely his. You can hear elements of Tony and Alvin in his playing, but just the fluidity and the musicality of his playing is really like a big influence on me. Yeah, I love Jack DeJohnette.
I'd really like just to quickly play Could Heaven Ever Be Like This. It's one of my favorite songs of all time.
I've heard you play it before. I heard you play it at Golden Dawn one time.
Yeah. I'll just play a snippet, of course, because DMCA people, they want to have us having too much fun. So we'll just get to the main part.
Yeah.
You might recognize that from a Drake sample.
Whoa.
I feel music in your eyes. Rainbows in your kiss. I have never reached such highs. Could heaven ever be like this?
So yeah, we'll have to keep it kind of brief, but I mean, like you said, that's a loft classic, and people like Jamie XX have sampled it, and I mean, it's still a very contemporary record, I think, and a timeless record,
And there's that crab apple or crab cakes on that same record. That's really cool too.
Yeah, it's a fantastic record. One time I got burned on Discogs. I bought a copy, and there was a skip on that song, and I was like, can't have that.
I once bought about 5 copies of that from A1 Records in New York. Like,
oh wow!
Like down below in the bins down below, they had all these copies for like $3, and I just was like, I can't not just keep like multiple copies of this, and I think I just gave them away to friends.
Oh, that's such a good thing to do, and yeah, I mean, you can never have too many. You definitely want to have doubles of that record, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, that's incredible. Can you tell us a bit more about that private lesson that you had with Bernard Purdie? I mean, because when you attended, you said you attended Red Bull Music Academy, right? And, what was that?
2004 in Rome, initially.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was Bernard Purdie was one of the lecturers there. So I just asked him, could I get a private lesson from you? Uh, and yeah, he was really incredible. He watched me play, and he was like, basically had lots of good uh, positive affirmations about how I was playing. But he was quite big on like things like posture. He's like, you really want to make sure you have shoes that can let your feet slip on the pedals. So I think I was wearing like Chuck Taylors or something. It's like you need to get some leather sole shoes
Cool.
so you kind of get this shimmy going on. But he was big about posture, and he was also big about time and counting. Like he visualizes number one when he's playing. So he's counting. If he's playing 4/4, he's counting 4 beats to the bar. Yeah, we had like a good couple of hour lesson with him, and he imparted so many amazing things. Huge amount of stories, anecdotes. Yeah, he's such a amazing character. Like larger than life personality.
Man,
And
I'll,
so iconic, man. Like the amount of records he's played on is just phenomenal.
yeah. Yeah, there's that documentary where they talk about how they made Steely Dan's Asia,
Yeah, that's right.
and I mean
Yeah,
it's that iconic time where he's talking about, oh yeah, they wanted me to play drums, and I said I'm gonna do the Purdy Shuffle, and he plays the Purdy
yeah,
Shuffle, and it's just
yeah, yeah.
so in the pocket, and he seems
It's amazing. Yeah,
and so comfortable, right? Like just it's coming through him.
yeah. And then, I mean, that's so iconic as a beat. Like, Jeff Porcaro, like, basically took that beat, but also kind of pretty pretty with it. He said, "This is the pretty shuffle, but I'm going to use it." Yeah,
Make it his bread and butter. And I mean, yeah, Jeff
yeah,
Porcaro, another legend right there. I mean,
right.
he's arguably one of the most recorded drummers of the '80s. Would you say? Oh, we lost you. We lost you, Julian. Come back. um, so yeah, we're just talking about drums. Hope you guys are vibing with the drum chat, and Julian's record modes. We got him back again. Here he is.
Sorry, I
All
don't know what's
good.
happening
It's all good, man.
down here in the Antipodes.
I mean, it's got a long way to travel, that's for sure. But it's really great having you on here, man.
Thank
I
you very
wanted to
much.
talk about your drums. I've noticed that on the new record, in fact, in the last couple of records, you've incorporated a lot more of your live drums on
Yeah,
pretty much all tracks, if not all of them. Um,
yeah.
More so recently, and it's really great to hear that. And it does also keep the whole album like kind of like a very cohesive sound to it. Is that kind of become more of a priority than on previous albums, or is that an intentional thing?
Absolutely, yeah. I think potentially, like in the early days, uh, it kind of didn't make as much sense to have as much live drumming. As the tempo increased, and as I got better at kind of forging a sort of signature sound sonically for the drums, and I guess feel wise, I wanted to make it more prominent and push it more to the fore. And I think also it's playing to your strengths. Like that's my main forte, is playing the drums. So having live drums and percussion feature is something that I want to present to the world more. And I think it's a good point of difference to a lot of other producers that maybe don't play drums or don't have access to that. I think it kind of defines it more as my kind of signature sound. Uh, and yeah, and it definitely ties back into sort of some of the vintage things, the more of the African or Nigerian disco kind of feels and things that I incorporate over kind of more kind of conventional house or disco program drums. And it's a way that you can get a lot of feel and overemphasize certain things, exaggerate certain rhythmic devices. Like you can get more of the push and pull and the swagger and things. And I guess that kind of relates maybe back to the JD, the J Dilla kind of thing too. There's incorporating the sort of the rub or the slightly more swung versus straight things. You can kind of overemphasize those things more readily and easily with live drums, especially if it's kind of up against the backdrop of something that's programmed. Yeah, so definitely all of those things are quite conscious, and again, something that kind of works well live too. So I've been doing live shows with some other musicians, but I play the drums along to some of the program beats, and I try and incorporate those same kind of devices live, which add a lot of excitement to the show, and also kind of propulsion and vitality to the track. Yeah.
Dynamics, of course, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all those things, the ghosting. Um, there's probably not as much of the kind of jazz language that I practice and play in other contexts. So uh, I'm definitely working on playing like more kind of conventional or modern jazz, but I don't always make that uh, part of the programmed produced music setup as much. I feel like it's easy. It's decompartmentalize those things and put those things in another context. So I've got other bunch of recordings where I'm playing more kind of fluid, over the top drumming, and also I have context in New Zealand. So I play in a band called Avondale Bowling Club, which is like a rap group with Tom Scott, and he gives me kind of carte blanche to do whatever. And so those records have quite grandiose, kind of slightly more Jack DeJohnette, Tony Williams inspired drum parts with rapping over the top. So I have other outlets where I can kind of express myself in that way. And then in terms of my own music, it's often a little bit more simplified and kind of more relatable to disco or to Nigerian disco and boogie.
It's cool hearing you talk about like that Dilla swing too, and I thought it was really cool. Moody Man used your track with Mata TK, Stained Glass Fresh Frozen, on his DJ Kicks compilation.
Yeah,
And obviously Moody Man also being from Detroit, that's got to be a massive cosign. He's arguably
absolutely.
one of the coolest
Yeah.
DJs out. How did it feel to be chosen for that compilation by someone like Moody Man?
Just mind blowing, really. I mean, he's so influential. Like, I'm such a massive devotee of black music, and particularly black music from Detroit. So um, I'm very cautious about not stealing anything from them. I am influenced by it and I love it, but I try not to be directly quoting it. But to have someone like Moody Man include me on that compilation was just an incredible gift. I'm so thankful, really. I was lucky enough to get asked by him to remix. What's his name? I totally forgot his name now. My brain has stopped working. I was just thinking of Wajid for some reason there, but Wajid is also a fan of my tunes and has been playing them. But no, I got a chance to remix Amp Fiddler for the Mahogany label, which was again a huge honor, because Amp Fiddler, obviously with his legacy with Parliament Funkadelic, and then introducing Jay Dilla to the EPC, and
Tribe Called Quest.
he's like the Tribe Called Quest, like it's incredible. So really, I'm just so fortunate and just so thankful for all of that stuff. I mean, I totally love and adore all of the music and those guys that are pioneers, really. DJ Dez, he's one of my favorite of all time. Like, as a DJ, as a producer, as a percussionist, the guy is unbelievable. Yeah.
That's
And
so
then
cool.
Kenny, Moody Man. I saw Marcellus Pittman play recently. He came down to Aotearoa and played a bunch of shows, and he was next level.
Wow.
Obviously Theo Parrish.
Mm.
Love Theo, and I was lucky enough to work with Theo briefly in Cologne, the same session as the Mizell brothers and Steve Spacek and Omas Keith from Sarah, Mike Pritchard, and recorded on a tune of Theo's called Chemistry. I did the percussion on it.
Wow.
I don't think I got credited, but that doesn't really matter. But yeah, just all praise to Detroit and to those pioneers and those iconic heroes, you know.
Yeah.
And shout out to Wajid too. Yeah.
Yeah, big love to Wajid. In fact, yeah, I don't want to spoil it too much. We actually spoke to Wajid. We're in regular contact with
Wow.
Jito and his school out there. And we had him on the podcast last year as well. He talked a lot about it, and we talked a lot about just the Detroit being the birthplace of techno and the birthplace of so many genres, and
Yeah.
just having such a massive influence on modern music. And I mean, if you've never been there, or have you been to Detroit?
No, I never, and I'd love to. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Very unassuming place, and I mean, you go into some of those places, those record stores, like Wajid had his record store next to Underground Resistance, and
Yeah.
these are very small places. They're not, you can see Moody Man's house and stuff. They're not, they're larger than life in your mind, and when you go there, it's quite humbling. That so much amazing music comes out of such a humble and unassuming place.
Yeah.
But I'd really like to play actually your track "Stained Glass Fresh Frozen" just for some context, which is I'll just play the version from your record, but it's not the mixed version, but this is the one
same track essentially. Yeah.
It's the version that's on the DJ Moody Man DJ Kicks compilation. So we'll just get right to Mara TK's vocals on this one. Mara TK, of course, of Electric Wire Hustle as well.
Yeah.
Calling, said I'm calling to you. Calling, said I'm calling to you. In a silent way, a whisper in the dawning. You come to say you, I'm still here.
I can't play too much more, otherwise, we're going to get banned. But I love how you can hear everything that you were talking about in that song. You've got elements of even techno and that Dilla swing in there. That beat is ridiculous. Really inspiring track right there, and it's great. It seems to be a timeless classic, and that's from when did that get put out? Like 2009.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Still so fresh, I just want to also say I see Rick Bunga in the chat. I think I'm saying that right, which I think is a play on Bic Runga. And you asked a question earlier. We'll get to that a little bit later as well. We're definitely going to have some time for Q&A towards the end here. But just keeping keeping it moving on this conversation here. You talked a little bit about on this record, kind of using your drums to kind of have a bit more of your own character and definitely finding a character of your own. But was there ever a time or stage in your musical career where you felt like you wanted to conform to a certain genre or a certain style before you found your own voice or your lane, as they say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was prone to kind of aping styles and being reverential to certain producers' kind of touches, and I think that just comes down to maturity. Sometimes you just get so heavily influenced by things because the producer or the kind of music is so important. Like I think if you look at every saxophone player in the 50s, impossible not to be influenced by Charlie Parker, and then post John Coltrane, every tenor saxophone player's kind of got a lot of that vocabulary. I think that people like JD and Madlib are the Charlie Parkers of the hip hop producers world, and then you have the Flying Lotus, and the whole LA beat scene was huge for me, and that was like the Coltrane equivalent. And I sort of had to work through all of that stuff to get out the other side and just kind of find out what my own sound was about, Yeah. But definitely, yes. And I think that was true of a lot of my peers too. I think that all of us had times where we leaned a bit too heavy on a certain style that we're feeling at the moment, it just takes a while to figure out that that's not the way to go. It's better to explore what your own kind of story and message is, and that's probably more important to have that out in the world than someone that's kind of copying someone else.
Yeah, it's just interesting to hear. I think a lot of people might get stuck there, even and how to
Yeah.
get out of that can probably be a bit challenging for some people. But it's good to know that I guess just by continuing to do it, you work through that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think I'm also like, it's also a blessing and a curse to have certain limitations around your production style, or your technical ability on instruments, or you know, in terms of what gear you use, and how good you are at playing certain instruments or what have you, or particularly what samples you like to choose. If you choose the same samples as your favorite producers, then it's going to sound a whole lot like them. And I think going back to before about the drumming thing, it was more important for me to put forward elements that are closely more related to my skill set as a live musician and as a jazz drummer or as a funk drummer, and kind of say, hey, this is kind of mostly what I'm about. Let's push that forward, and then combine some of the other elements which maybe are kind of more relatable to my other career as a visual artist. So I have a method of making music which is kind of akin to collage or sculpture, where there's addition and subtraction. You're adding things and then you're taking things away, thinking of things visually rather than theoretically around music. Yeah, so all of those things come into play. You kind of trying to make it more relatable to your life experiences and what you have to offer as a musician and human being, as an artist too.
Yeah, it's cool to hear also just about technical limitations, because I think for some of us, I think, maybe being a jazz master on the piano, or understanding harmony really very well, which is quite a very challenging thing. Speaking for myself here, maybe, but to not know that will allow you to focus on other things, maybe like a bass line or just a single melody, and lean into those things. Or
Yeah.
even to what you said even earlier about certain records that were led by drummers and therefore more focused on rhythm and drums and a groove for a
Yeah.
repetitive groove, which of course is, I mean, what everyone wants when they're on the dance floor, anyways, right? So it works really
That's
well.
right. Yeah, and I think often composers work through those things. You have, if you look at Giant Steps from Coltrane, and then to his later works before he died, he kind of went from the most complex harmonic things, to essentially drones, like, modal music or single chord and rhythmically free music. Same with Miles Davis, his 70s bands, they got into this really heavy drone, jamming on E flat minor for 4 hours is what they joke about. And even Stravinsky and stuff, like his final works, that working with just C minor or C major, like, I think often people have to work through a lot of different things before they end up back down to the raw essentials. And often with dance music, those things are the best things, when you get the main essence of something which encapsulates all those things, enough harmonic interest, enough rhythmic insistence, cool bass line, and then essentially you have it. Things
Yeah.
that come in and out. People are used to hearing things that are kind of repetitive nowadays, and whereas other cultures have known about these things for centuries. So I don't know, it all works in kind of waves and cycles.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about that, because I think about some of the most successful jazz records of all time, and the ones that were the most impactful to me. And Kind of Blue is kind of like this,
Yeah.
penultimate record, where it's Miles, who's obviously an incredible player, and his band are all incredible players, and they've just come to this kind of understanding of just playing what needs to be played and not going too far. And then, of course, Herbie Hancock with Headhunters and
Yeah.
that whole Herbie, of course, being a beast on the keys, but just figuring out that he just wants to make a record that sounds like Sly Stone and just
Exactly.
keep it simple. And those are the best selling records, and often, I've heard it being said, the hardest music to make is the simplest music. It's so easy to
Yeah.
put a lot of stuff
Absolutely.
in there, but just to keep it to the raw elements is actually very difficult to make it sound original and raw and simple.
Absolutely, yeah.
But speaking of which, on your record, I really love the harmony. There's so many. The song structures are really beautiful, and there's I hear a lot of R&B and stuff in there. And I was wondering, I noticed Brandon Haru was on a lot of
Yeah.
these songs. Did he bring a lot of influence to that with the album as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, Brandon's integral and key to my vision of music. I mean, he's just such a phenomenal musician and writer and creative person. And yeah, often the demos I have are kind of harmonically sort of static. We're sitting around one or two chords, and Brandon and I work together, and he will kind of help me tack on a B section or make it go somewhere else. So I rely on his skills as a songwriter to add these sort of Frankenstein other limbs to the body. But yeah, shout out to Brandon. He's incredible. Yeah, love
Yeah,
him.
I know. I have to say, just we give him some flowers while we can, and we're talking about him. I noticed he got a massive cosign from Timbaland pretty recently on Twitch,
Absolutely, yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just so cool to see. He's such an unassuming guy and so low key. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, now so people are starting to catch on about Brandon, how amazing he is. Obviously, he's a member of the Lady Six group with myself and Parks and Lady. Uh, uh, and yeah, we work really well as a team, and just a beautiful and incredibly talented. And yeah, he's part of the Timberland's Beat Club now, so he's
cool.
See what happens.
Oh, we lost you again. We'll just wait for you to come back. But yeah, if you're not familiar with Brandon Haru, yeah, really incredible keyboard player. And yeah, he was recently on the Timbaland Twitch channel, and yeah, he got massive coastline from Timbaland there. Hey, welcome back, Julian.
Yeah,
Since we're talking about jazz, and we're
Sorry.
talking about jazz a lot, which I love, of course.
yeah.
And we've talked a lot about older jazz music. Can you tell us about maybe are you listening to any current jazz music, or what's your, if you could maybe say what's your like state of jazz in the world right now? Where do you think it's at, and is there anyone that you think are killing it right now?
Yeah, there's tons of people that are making incredible music and have pushed the vocabulary and the language of jazz to this kind of outer space level. Myself, I'm still obsessed with jazz music from the '60s and the '70s predominantly. So I'm probably not the right person to ask about that. However, there's a record by a friend of mine in Wellington called Lucien Johnson, and Lord Echo mixed it, and it's kind of it's just such a beautiful, incredible record. It's called Wax Wayne is the name of the album, and it's got John Bell on vibraphone, who plays on my records. Ooh. And I can't remember the name of them. Michelle is the harpist. My friend Corey Champion on drums, who's an amazing drummer and producer. Ricky Gooch is on percussion, and Tom Call on bass. Just kind of really honed in and tapped into that kind of Alice Coltrane, Yusef Lateef, John Coltrane from the Atlantic era, I guess. And also Farrah Sanders, like Harvest Time. It's got all of those kind of influences, but yet it's uniquely its own. And Lord Echo, Mike Fabulous, did an incredible job mixing it. That would be one of my favorite jazz records from the last couple of years. And I would implore anyone to go check that out. Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's not like a Spang-a-lang 4/4 bebop sort of vibe. It's definitely more kind kind of spiritual music. But yeah, incredible record.
That's cool to hear. I feel like honestly, there seems to be a bit of a resurgence of jazz. I mean, maybe it's just coming with this whole '90s resurgence,
Yeah,
in fashion and everything that's happening right now, which obviously we've lived through, but it's great to see it
yeah,
coming back again. And yeah, like I mean, obviously there's bands like Bad Not Good, and then there's our
yeah,
Hiatus Coyote, who obviously have a lot of jazz influence in their music, and it
yeah,
almost feels like it's coming back. And
totally.
I mean, maybe I'm not even up on it, but it's cool. Like I got a couple young friends that are just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go study jazz and I want to play in jazz. I don't care about anything else. It's like, wow, I
Yeah,
was like that, at one point. But
yeah,
it's cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely cool. I've got a jazz band called the Circling Sun. We're playing tomorrow night here in Auckland, and that's got J.Y. Lee on saxophone, who plays with Avondale Bowling Club as well. Cameron Allen, who you
Oh yeah,
remember,
yeah,
Cameron, yeah. Ben Tudor on bass, who also plays with Avondale Bowling Club. You remember Ben and the Tudor brothers?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember Junior Tudor?
Oh yeah,
Ben
Junior,
Tudor
he's the legend. Yeah.
and Marapi Tudor. Yeah, so Ben's the middle brother, incredible bass player. Guy Harrison, who plays like in every band in New Zealand, from Troy Kingy to Avondale Bowling Club. He's a phenomenal keyboard player. He's all over my record. The guy's amazing. Who else is in the band? We're gonna have Lucky Paul Taylor's gonna come join us.
Oh cool. Yeah. Love Lucky
He's
Paul. Shout out
yeah,
Lucky
he's
Paul.
been based in Los Angeles, playing with Feist, and he's now playing with the with Neil Finn and Marlon Williams, and yeah, incredible guy, incredible musician. Yeah, so there's definitely that vibe is around and happening. I'm still kind of predominantly stuck in music from yesteryear, so but I definitely I'm keeping kind of close eye on all the amazing jazz music that comes out of New York and in Melbourne and all these other places, and there's so many great players and so many people doing cool, interesting things. I think it's really healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So now, I mean, we've talked a little bit about your art very very briefly, and Rick Bunga actually asked in the chat a little bit earlier on about your art, and I wanted to talk about the fact that you're also a very accomplished visual artist. And
yeah,
when we actually first met, you were playing music, but you were in art school, and
yeah.
do you find like, well, yeah, let's just talk about your background as a visual artist. Is that complementary to your music? Does it inform them? Those
Yeah.
sorts of things.
I think there's quite a lot of thought processes and modes and ways of working that are complementary to making produced music and making visual art. It's quite a simpatico thing where particularly composition or just layouts or just working with things in an additional or subtraction kind of manner. If you kind of think that way, it can kind of help you out and putting together music too, I think.
Like a
And I
mood
think,
board?
yeah, or just you can actually visually kind of see things in a way, but you can also, it's just the way of thinking about things in terms of editing. So, and I think that's why me and Jeremy Toy worked so well together in the past, because Jeremy's such an incredible musician and producer. I felt like I was probably more the ideas guy in some ways, or I brought a different way of thinking about it that was complementary to his methodology.
I can't believe we
Yeah.
haven't talked about Jeremy yet. I mean, Jeremy is an integral part of the reason why I know who you are in the first place.
Exactly, yeah. So
And
likewise, yeah.
and a very, very important person. If you guys aren't familiar with Jeremy Toy, his work as Leonard Charles or Ota, or as part of his group with Julien, actually Open Souls. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Jeremy's a legend in New Zealand and around the world. He's got a record recently with Guilty Simpson, Leonard Simpson
Yeah.
duo. Check
Yeah.
that out if you haven't already. Yeah, and a lifelong friend of mine, a dear friend, one of the best people I've ever met in my life, and
Yeah.
I owe him a lot for everything I've ever learned and explored with music. So shout out Jeremy Toy, big shout out.
Yeah, likewise, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he
Um,
was definitely hugely influential when we were younger too, and also with you being in Canada, he was getting all the information from you about hip hop and producing music and kind of feeding it to us, you know. So you were the link too.
That's cool. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
I didn't know I don't know what I was doing. I was just sending these cassette tapes. This is dating myself heavily here, but I'd be making these cassette tapes with the records that I would buy and send them to Jeremy. And I'm glad to know that they were shared.
Studied.
Yeah.
They were studied. Yeah.
That's crazy. I've got Wachazu in the chat just asking about the jazz group that you were talking about. If they're playing in Auckland anytime soon, or if they will be playing in Auckland.
Yeah, tomorrow night.
Oh wow.
A place called Nice Goblins, 220 Dominion Road, and it's free entry.
Oh wow.
8 p.m. Yeah, tell them to come along, or her to come along.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be there if I could.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
That sounds awesome. That's so rad that you guys get to experience live music like that right now. Definitely itching for some of that. But
Yeah.
just jumping back to the visual artistry. One of the artists, when I was thinking of talking to you about visual art, an artist that came to mind that I learned very recently was from Aotearoa, New Zealand, is Len Lai. I hope I'm saying that name right. Did you study like that style of visual, or did he come up in your studies at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's iconic. Is probably one of the most famous international artists from New Zealand. And his work, encapsulates so many different mediums. So from his short films like Tusalava, where he's working with sort of animation and actually modifying the film like by hand, and then accompanying it with kind of this modern jazz soundtracks, to his abstract paintings of that time, to his large sculptural works, which are often mechanized or moved by the wind. Hugely influential artist. And he was in New York and doing stuff, and mixing up with contemporary artists in like the 50s and stuff.
So cool.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll
but definitely check out his short films. I think there's some of them you can watch them online. But amazing.
Actually, if you don't mind, I was gonna play one of them. One of them that has been a really influential piece to me is his film Free Radicals, and I think it ties in really nicely with what you've been talking about in this interview today, with your your influence of obviously African music and rhythms and so forth. I know he uses music. I'm not gonna quote it properly, but I know it's from rhythmic, a group from Africa. I'm not too sure where. I apologize for that. But let me just play this piece he made called Free Radicals. It's just so amazing. We'll just watch a little bit of it. But this was made similar to what you were talking about, where he's literally scraping the film with a pen, and it's rhythmic, and it's mind blowing. So here, anyways, without further ado, here's Len Lai's Free Radicals, a short snippet of it. So I probably shouldn't play too much more than that. But amazing. You can see, just how incredible that is, and how effective that is as a piece of visual art. This is 1958. It's just insane.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah.
It's just it hasn't like it's so contemporary still, in my opinion. If I went to some kind of event and a DJ was playing and that was like going on, I'd be like, whoa, this is some dope. You know what I mean? Dope visuals.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's really incredible.
Yeah. Should check out. There's another one. To Free Radicals is incredible. I think it's called Tusa Lava, where it's like it's sort of like these biomorphic kind of amoeba shapes. He also lived in Polynesia somewhere. I'm not sure if it was Samoa or Tonga. Yeah, incredible guy and incredible life story. But yeah, there's a real Polynesian and African influence in his work too. There's kinetic sculptures too, with these sort of like large metal bands which have these kind of steel balls that hit things at certain points. So it's kind of like percussive, but visually quite stimulating too. Yeah.
Yeah,
incredible.
I just love the way that it's it's all rhythmic, and I mean often, visual doing it seems even today with technology, visual things with rhythm is still very, very challenging. And
Yeah.
the fact that he figured out some way of doing that in 1958 is still just, it's kind of insane, like
Absolutely.
revolutionary.
Yeah.
And the fact that he, if there was like a beat behind that and you told me it was like a Flying Lotus production, I wouldn't second guess it in a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's really, really impressive. But yeah, so I guess I'll just say quickly, I got a little excerpt from the Wikipedia page. So that piece specifically began in 1958 and completed in 1979. Lyon made
Oh,
the
wow.
film by directly scratching the film stock. The resulting figures of motion are set to music by the Baigurimi tribe of Africa. I mean, I'm probably butchering that. I apologize. But yeah, it's... And you said Tusalava, that is also on YouTube. You can watch that. And there's another one that I watched called A Color Box.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I
which is
dig that
also
one too.
Really, really impressive. It's so cool. Like, I think, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but, growing up in New Zealand, maybe I wasn't aware of a lot of the cool things that, came from New Zealand, a lot
Right.
of the cool artists and cool musicians and the history of that. And it's been great as an adult to kind of learn more about these things. And even when coming back to you is when, you put your record out, Modes, I was like, this is so cool. Like, not only do I know this guy's from New Zealand, it makes me very, very proud to see, this music that's so, it just sounds so good. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't know how to say that any other way, but it's just very exciting to feel that you're representing New Zealand in this way on a world stage.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, man.
Are there any other artists though from Aotearoa that you feel like the world should know about?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the Nielsen brothers, so Ruben and Cody Nielsen and their dad Chris Nielsen. Obviously, I mean, not obviously. That's Unknown Mortal Orchestra, but then also Cody's solo projects like Opossum, Silicon, and music under his own name, Cody Nielsen.
I love that Silicon record so much, man. I
Yeah.
literally made a post about it the other day because I was just like, I don't think people know this record, and they really should because it's so good.
Yeah, incredible drummer and amazing talent. I mean, one of my heroes. And I was lucky enough to perform with Silicon, and we toured in Europe, and also I was a member of Opossum for a while. So
I think I saw you play at the
Yeah.
Auckland Museum when I
Oh,
was
that's
back
right,
there.
yeah.
It was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
fantastic gig.
yeah, other people from New Zealand, Lord Echo, Mike Fabulous, he's incredible friend of mine, amazing, also on Soundway and also on Wonderful Noise Records. Christoph Altruento, who's incredible beatmaker and DJ. He mixed my record, Modes. Yeah, Jeremy Toy, aka Leonard Charles, he's incredible. Parks and Brandon from the Lady Six group. Man, there's so many people. Yeah, like you said, Spell was on here before. He's next level,
Yeah,
Ricky
shout out
Dick.
Spell.
Ricky Gooch is one of my heroes from Wellington. Incredible drummer and music producer. He makes music as Cave Circles.
Okay.
Corey Champion is another friend of mine from Wellington. An amazing drummer, jazz drummer. Went to the jazz school but makes really great house and techno music as Borrowed CS. and he's got a side project, sort of jazz influenced band called Clear Path Ensemble. Really incredible. There's lots of young cats here in Auckland, like Kenny Sterling, and then the Noah Records guys. So that's Larson Taylor or Rahara Tito Taylor. They've put out an incredible record called Virtual Shadow Ensemble
Okay.
about a year or two ago. Really amazing kind of spiritual jazz sort of inflected record with some poetry on it. A real link to kind of distinctly Polynesian aspects, Māoridom and Polynesia in general. There's just, I mean, I could just keep going on and on. There's so many people that are making crazy cool music here, and also just like releasing records on their own or with labels overseas. And yeah, apologies if I've missed anyone. There's just so many cool people doing stuff.
Hey man, it's all good. It's just
Yeah.
great to have a couple recommendations.
Yeah, I
No,
can.
I
I'll send you those links if you. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess we should probably start wrapping this up. I
Yeah.
just wanted to quickly ask, what's coming up next for you, and where can people find you if they want to interact with you or
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
see.
the music can be found on all the regular platforms: Spotify, Bandcamp, iTunes, all of those things. The vinyl should be out soon.
Oh, cool.
Been a bit of delay with this COVID stuff, but that's coming out, yeah, via Soundway. Um, and I'm doing some live shows to promote the record. So I'm playing at a festival next weekend, not this weekend, down south of Auckland, a place called Tirau. It's a festival called That Weekend, which also features maybe Frank Booker and Lord Echo and a bunch of there's another really cool festival on Waiheke Island called Flamingo Pier.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
playing twice at that, and that's also featuring Lord Echo and a bunch of other really cool acts. Yeah, it's a good one if you're in the Auckland region. Like super cool programming. Flamingo Pier is actually an act. They're on Soundway too, but they have a festival as well.
Oh, cool.
But always super hip programming, like best DJs and bands. Yeah,
And I mean, Waiheke Island. If you've been to New Zealand or if you're going to New Zealand, is a fantastic destination.
absolutely.
Just to
Yeah,
hang out,
yeah. Mata TK is playing with his own group there as well, which would be really fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those are two picks, I'd say. There's two things, but there should be plenty more coming up this summer too.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I wanted to thank you very much for your time, Julian. If anyone has any questions in the chat, now would be the time to quickly jump in before we step out here. But if not, then I think we just keep it moving. And before I go, I do want to play one more of your songs. One of my favorite ones off the record featuring Lady Six, "Be Real."
Cool.
And I was going to try and play the side project you have with Lord Echo, Lord Julian.
Oh yeah,
But if you're interested in hearing that, I mean, you can just find that on DSPs and on the playlist that I've created on
Cool.
SoundCloud, so you can check that out on your own. So, yeah, I think that's probably it. Let's ride out to "Be Real" with Lady Six off Julian's new record Modes, which is available everywhere right now, and as you mentioned, vinyl soon. Definitely got to get a copy of that. But before I go, is there anything else you'd like to say before we peace out?
no man, I just want to say thanks to you, Matt, and it's great chatting to you, and I really appreciate all the cool questions, and thanks to anyone that's listened to my music in the past or in the future, and I hope to see you somewhere at a show. Please come and say hi if I see you or you see me somewhere. Yeah.
Fantastic, Julian. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. Have a fantastic day and or evening, I guess, at this point. And I hope to see. Yeah, I do hope to see you soon, whether it's in New Zealand or overseas when you start touring that record. So,
Thanks, man.
yeah, take care. Say hi to Gail and the fam, and
Awesome, bro.
I'll be
So
seeing
much.
you soon.
Cheers, man.
All right, peace.
See you. Bye.
So here we go. Be Real with Lady Six See you guys real soon. Thank you for tuning in.
Peace.
My mind is worth 1,000 hearts. Your heart's not big enough for me. I take away the biggest part and save us both the bad trip for free. Don't go wasting my time, baby. My life's not a toy for your games. I don't play those petty pointless poker faces. Not in my face. Be real. Be real. Be real. Be real for me. For me. For me. Be real. Be real. Be real for me. I try to get to you. I try to be open too. I try to find you, honey, but you're not picking up what I'm putting down. So I'm taking my love